You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Thank you for joining me today. Hopefully you tuned in yesterday to our start to the new year with our Motivation and Mindset Monday on how you can create better New Year's goals this year without becoming totally overwhelmed. So hopefully you checked out that show, and it leads in perfectly today to our 10 ways sugar harms you from the inside out. Because if you want to transform your health this year, if you want to transform your body and ideally live longer as well with a better quality of life, you have to start limiting sugar in your diet. It's one of those must-dos, not would-like-to-dos. And the reason is that although it is okay, and I talk about this all the time, to have a cheat meal once a week or twice a week, totally fine. Whatever foods you would like, go for it. Not going to be a problem once you get yourself well. Once you've done 21 days in an elimination diet, not a problem at all. You should be able to enjoy yourself, and I have no problem with that. However, it's these daily cheats. It's these little things that sneak in. Everything from lattes, from, flavored lattes from Starbucks or any other place, or that glass of juice you have when you wake up in the morning. We'll be talking about that. Or maybe a can of soda that you have, or maybe an afternoon sweet to keep you, up, to keep your energy levels a little higher. All of these things can start to harm us in many different ways. I'm going to go over 10 of them today. So the first one I want to start with is probably the most important, is that the reason why it's so important to cut sugar out of the diet is that it's addictive. So once you get on the sugar train, it is really difficult to stop and get off. And it's because every time you have sugar, you literally get a blast of dopamine. You get one of those neurochemicals, those neurotransmitters that I've talked about before on a previous show, that literally lights you up inside. It gives you more energy. It gives you more ambition, more drive, more happiness, all those things. It's literally a drug. It's like an opioid. You literally have your own opioids released when you do eat sugar. And what that does, though, it does give you that temporary high. There's no doubt about it. It's been often indicated or aligned with cocaine, and they've actually used some of the same medications that they treat cocaine addiction with, or nicotine addiction, that they do to get the brain under control in terms of weaning off sugar. So it's pretty remarkable when you look at drugs like nicotine or cocaine and how they affect the body just like they would with sugar. They've done this with humans. They've done this in rat studies. And that's a big issue. And the reason is that if we look at sugar now as more of a drug than a food itself, we can start to see why places like McDonald's adds sugar to their French fries, and they add sugar to all different types of beverages. And the reason they do that is that it makes it more addictive. But the problem is that it leads to all of these other health complications that we're going to start to talk about now. But one more I want to talk about, just because it has so much to do with today's topic, is that when you start to take in some of these, like let's just say fructose-based foods, and fructose-based foods are essentially more of the processed foods. They put in a lot more of the fructose, again, which I'm going to be chatting about on today's show, the difference between good fruit sugar and fructose. And what happens with that, and I do really want to mention this right now, is that we want our leptin and ghrelin levels to stay balanced, meaning that we want our ghrelin levels to become, at least a little bit elevated, and leptin to become suppressed. And that just doesn't happen. So we want to get the body to stop storing so much body fat and to start burning it as a fuel source, because there's people out there, I get literally questions every day about, okay, how do I use my fat as a fuel source? How do I predominantly do that? And I talk about it all the time. And I know that people are asking with well-meaning, but the truth is that your body should naturally use fat as a fuel source. You don't need to go on any special diet. What you need to do is balance your blood sugar levels, balance your inflammation levels, and yes, for a period of time, eliminate those starchy foods that contain more fructose or contain higher levels of a glycemic index on that food. But the food itself isn't really the issue. What happens is that we've been used to getting them in our diet for so often and so long that now it's become an issue. So let's get right into it now. So that was number one, the addiction of it. That's just first and foremost. That's why it's so hard to get off of. But I'm telling you, within about 7 days, we see people around day 4 or 5 on the Dr. Ball detox, which is also a sugar detox elimination diet. that around day 4 or 5, they start coming around and they've broken it. And now they don't have that need for even caffeine in the same way. I mean, you're still allowed to have one small black coffee on the Dr. Ball Detox in the morning if you need to, or a black tea. But a lot of people, they break their addiction from that as well. So really, really important to see is that it takes about a week, sometimes a little bit more, but most people are really able to break that addiction within a week, certainly within the 21 days, I recommend. All right, number 2, how does sugar harm you from the inside out? This is a big one. People don't give the liver enough credit. It's probably the most important organ in your body. I know that you need all of your organs, but really without your liver is what processes and cleans all of your blood. So legitimately, all the blood in your body is filtered through your liver. Think of it as like the car filter. It takes all that smog and everything from the outside and tries to protect you. And what your liver does, every 6 minutes, it cleans all of your blood. And of course, it can't get everything, but it tries. Now, when we take in sugar, it slows your liver's ability to detoxify your blood. One of the ways that it does that is that your liver has to metabolize fructose a little bit differently than it does glucose. Glucose could be used directly by the cells. And that's why I talk about this all the time with people who are the Vata body type, the ectomorph body type. Their body gets to literally soak up and use glucose at a much faster rate than the endomorph. That's the body type that typically, yes, they can add a little bit more weight. They become type 2 diabetic. Not always, of course. I'm not saying that, but they're more prone to it. And the reason is that they don't use glucose as quickly, which we're going to be talking about. But the problem is with the fructose in general for everyone, is that it really does harm the liver. And it's going to harm the liver in one way, which I'm going to talk about in just one moment. But what happens is when your liver is not able to fully break down and utilize fructose, well, let's just say that you had a glass of fruit juice in the morning instead of eating the whole fruit itself, or you had a can of soda, you're taking on more fructose, more sugar. So think of anything that ends in OSE as being a sugar substance, is that your liver has to process that. So when you take in that, your body starts to avoid any backup in the liver and starts to create these things called triglycerides. And so that's our number 3. Our number 3 way is when the liver gets overloaded, it creates these fat droplets, which eventually does cause fatty liver disease. And even people who don't necessarily drink alcohol, so that's important to look at because you can get fatty liver not from just drinking alcohol, although that's an easy way to get it, but also from taking in a lot of sugary processed foods. Processed foods and processed grains also count as well. So if you're eating like Little Debbie snacks or different types of processed cereal, those contain fructose as well. It's not just beverages. I want to make that clear. So what happens is our liver starts to produce these things called triglycerides, and that happens when our blood sugar starts to get quite high. We'll talk about what happens with the pancreas and insulin in just a moment. But when we start to get higher levels of fructose, higher levels of sugar, our liver will produce these things called triglycerides. And triglycerides then go hand in hand with poor cardiovascular function, which I want to talk about next. So number 4 is that sugar can raise triglycerides. A lot of people think of just saturated fat or just fats as raising cholesterol. However, that's not true. Saturated fats, yes, will raise the cholesterol in susceptible people. So a lot of people say, oh, dietary cholesterol has no effect on your blood cholesterol, but it does. It does for about 26% of the population. I've mentioned that before. You can do a genetic test. You can just go to our store and just look at the genetic testing if you'd like, and you can run your own genetic test. You can actually see if you're one of those 26% of the population who does much, much better overall in terms of brain aging, cardiovascular-based health, blood pressure, and all of those things on a lower fat diet. Those people do better on sub 20% of their diet, usually right around 10% of their diet to maybe 15% max in fats, certainly not that many saturated fats. And that's because their body simply can't process it in the same way. So you could say fats are great for you, but if someone's not able to process it very well, well, then it's not right for them. And that's where we get into this thing called bioindividuality. It's so important. So if you're a health practitioner out there, a health expert, you write on health, you talk about health, you just have to let people know, sure, some people can handle a lot of avocado, a lot of even saturated fat coming from things like coconut oil or some, animal-based products, but some people can't. And so that's why in general, if you're giving blanket recommendations or foundational recommendations like I do, you just can't recommend a super high-fat diet because that's going to hurt a quarter of the population. So really important, I think, if we're giving recommendations, if you're saying, okay, 20%, 30% of your diet coming from fat, that's an okay recommendation. I don't have an issue with that for most people. And the reason is, sure, some people should be on the lower side, but some people with a different ApoE blood type, more of the number 2 allele, they can do 35% fat in their diet. Sure, that would be okay. Certainly not the 75% of the diet coming from fat that I've talked about on previous shows on a keto-based diet. Okay, so leading right into nicely, I actually just talked about this for that it raises cholesterol. But so unlike fat, which we just chatted about, I went on my infamous rants on fat. But here's the thing: is that there have been numerous studies found that people who get at least a quarter of their calories from sugar, processed sugar, remember, snacks, cereals, grains, breads, sugary drinks, anything like that, 25%, quarter, were twice as likely to die from cardiovascular disease than those people that had 10% of their calories from added sugar. I mean, it might seem like not that big a deal, 10 to 25%, but you just saw an enormous rise, twice as likely to die from cardiovascular disease. It really goes to show you that it's very important that you do stay away from these processed, these sugary foods, and that you stick to healthier whole foods, obviously. And we'll talk about fruits as well, because I think that's so important to chat about. All right, number five, before we get to all those healthy foods, is that having too much sugar in your diet can cause insulin resistance. Why is this important? Is because it's one of those silent things. It's one of those hidden things that just creeps up on you. People don't test their blood sugar all the time until they've been told they have type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes. And so the issue is this, is that if you keep giving your body sugar over and over and over, processed foods, and you're not really that Vata body type, you're not that ectomorph body type, and your body's not going to soak it up. But even again, I do have to say, being the ectomorph does not give you the right to eat just a ton of processed food and a ton of sugar. It just means that from whole foods, like whole starches, such as sweet potatoes and rice and certain types of grains, and then, of course, fruit, that you're able to utilize it better. That's for sure. But it doesn't give you carte blanche to just start eating, processed food and drinking just processed fruit juices. That's certainly not the case, or soda especially. But what happens is when you take in too much sugar over time, too many starches for most people, and it elevates your blood sugar, your pancreas, which is another organ in the body, it always produces insulin to bring down your blood sugar. That's normal. But if blood sugar stays elevated for too long and your body's always getting signals to produce more and more insulin, what happens is the cells can become desensitized. And the insulin, which is supposed to unlock the cells to allow the sugar to get into the cells, so now the cells can utilize that for energy, they become blocked. So those cell receptors become blocked or essentially shut off. One of the reasons is when the cells get filled, everything in your body has a capacity. So essentially your liver has a capacity that can hold for sugar. So it turns it into what's called glycogen. And then your muscles, the cells in the muscles as well, they can use it. They can store some, and they can also use it in the mitochondria for energy as well. Then after that, your body's going to start to create more adipose tissue. So this is our number 6. So as your body starts to create more insulin, the cells become resistant to that. You can actually become type 2 diabetic. That's essentially how that starts. Again, there are reverses for all of these things we're talking about right now. Essentially, as we're telling you how it happened, we can tell you how to reverse it. But number 6 is obesity. So what happens is once your liver glycogen stores get full, your muscle glycogen, all the cells in your body become full, your brain has the sugar that it needs. Well, now your body's going to start to increase adipose tissue. Adipose tissue are your fat stores or your fat cells, and they'll essentially expand and swell. So they will take in more of that sugar and basically create more fat. So more adipose tissue or enlarged adipose tissue. So what happens here is, and I really got to see this firsthand. This is one of the things that I took away so much from my time in China when I was studying there at a traditional Chinese medicine hospital in Beijing. And I was in old Beijing. So I've just gotten fortunate with so many things in life. I applied to a bunch of different clinical internships, and this was the one that I got accepted into, and it was exactly what I wanted, and I was just thrilled. But, sometimes it's what you study and what you see, if you keep your mind open, what you're outside of the clinic or outside of the hospital or outside of the classroom, because we had to do education before they allowed us to work with patients. So we had to test out, we had to make sure that we were able to work with patients. But the interesting thing is, and I worked a lot when I was over there. I really did. I worked from probably about 7 a.m. till, 6 to 7 at night. But I did get one day off per week, and that was myself and the other interns who were there who spoke English. We went out, and there weren't a lot of us, but we went out and we would just kind of stay local because we had no transportation. But I got to see, really the people who lived there. And it was amazing because everyone over the age of 30, 35, they were pretty fit, meaning like not like they were working out. This is old Beijing, so it's the older part of the city. And they had lived how they'd always lived for hundreds of years, and people were fit. They biked, they walked, they got local produce. It was great. It was amazing to see. It really, I mean, besides really I don't know the best way to say it, but the dirtiness, the smog of the city, which was really bad, to be honest with you, especially after the rainstorm, everything just dropped right to the ground and everything was covered in the soot. So that was not great at all. But the most devastating thing that I saw was that not all the teenagers, but about a third of the teenagers, which is what it's like in the US and below, they were obese. They were overweight. And when I asked what was going on, they said, well, this is really the first generation over the last 20 years that has gotten access to the fast food, to the Kentucky Fried Chicken, to the McDonald's, to all these fast food places. And so they're drinking soda, they're eating bread, they're doing all of these things, whereas traditionally they would have a lot of vegetables, they would have their rice bowls, they would have a little bit of meat, something like that. And they would have smaller meals and they'd be very, very active. Now they're playing video games, they're watching more TV than ever over the last 2 decades, and they have access to all this fast food. Honestly, it was criminal. It really was. I was like, wow. I didn't get to see this in the US because it happened well before I was born, but I got to see it. I got to see exactly how it happened. In the 50s and 60s, right after that is when it happened to the US. And so honestly, I don't understand why it's not a crime. I really don't. We just looked at the first generation in China now to become obese. This is the generation that's going to have, I'm sure, more of the autoimmune issues, more of all of the different health issues, and the increase in cancer and dementia and all of those things. And it's honestly, it's too bad. And they're just showing right now that, you're twice as likely to be overweight as a child or obese, the more sugar that you consume. So, and that was just, I should say, that study that I just quoted was just one or more beverages per day. So like one soda a day, or I keep going back to it. So I want to say it right now, is that if you're drinking like a boxed carton of juice, like not a fresh pressed vegetable juice, but if you're drinking like your typical glass of orange juice in the morning or whatever, apple juice, I'm telling you right now, that is not healthy for you and it's not healthy for your children. You are just giving unabated sugar. It's about 30 grams or so per glass of sugar that you're putting into your body or your child's body every 8 ounces. It's not good. I know we've been led to believe that it is good. It's not fresh pressed. It's not healthy. This is just basically straight sugar. Please give your child a green apple if you want to do some apples. If you want to do orange juice, give them an orange, or better yet, give them a grapefruit, even a little lower glycemic. Do those things. Get the fiber in there. Get the vitamins. Get all the minerals. Remember, all these juices have been heated. They've been pasteurized. There's very little good nutrition left in them and certainly no enzymes. So just one big, hopefully, takeaway right there. And definitely not to start your day. That will just start the sugar cascade. All right, number 7 is that sugar makes you age faster in terms of what your skin looks like. When people say like, oh, why do I have these brown spots in my skin? Why do I have these marks? Why do I have this? Why do I have that? Well, I've talked about this before, but those are called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. And those advanced glycation end products essentially come from fats and proteins that are in the bloodstream and they match up with sugar. So basically it's a process called glycation. And really what it is an oxidative-based process. So you're essentially talking about free radical damage, which I want to just talk about on number 9. But in terms of your skin, I usually refer to as lipid peroxide damage. So you get these fats, also called lipids, which we talked about before, raises cholesterol, triglycerides, hurts your liver. All of these things work together. I really hope you're seeing how sugar works in the entire system of the body and honestly devastates everything from the brain to the cardiovascular system, your vascular system for blood pressure, all of these things. But it affects your skin. It affects how the proteins and fats, when they're exposed to sugar, what happens and the free radical damage. That's why your skin is really a window into how your body's doing on the inside. So if you're getting a lot of wrinkling, if you're getting a lot of brown spots in your skin, you're getting dry skin, all of these things, you're looking at absorption-based problems, you're looking at gut-based problems, you're looking at too much sugar, all of these things. And that's why I'm so big on doing something like the detox or anything that you feel is appropriate for you, I want you to do. But just super important that you do your overnight 12-hour, intermittent fast from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and just really work on ridding your body of all these things by re-regulating blood sugar. I mean, that's such a big part of what we're talking about with that intermittent fast as well. All right, number 8 is that sugar also weakens your bones. You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't think about it because it's such a slow process. But when you eat sugar, you're increasing acidity. I mean, people don't like to talk about acid and alkaline because they don't truly understand the processes within the body. But, everyone agrees that your body maintains a certain pH. I don't disagree with that either. But the problem is there are certain calibration effects that go on within your body to actually recalibrate when you drink something like a very acidic soda. So let's just say you go out to dinner and you have a drink of alcohol or you have a can of soda, whatever it might be, Pepsi, Coke, whatever, you name your favorite. Whenever you drink that, your body has to literally go through hundreds of enzymatic transformations to bring your body up to a pH that keeps it balanced. And it does that through certain minerals, such as calcium, and calcium's the main one. So when that happens, where is it getting its calcium from? Sure, certainly there's some in the bloodstream, certainly you can get it from the tissues, but a lot of times you're getting that calcium from your bones. So this is how demineralization takes place. It's just one of the ways, but it's certainly one way that drinking a lot of sugar can demineralize the bones, pulling the calcium. Leaching the calcium is the best way to say it. Literally leaches the calcium right out of those bones. I mean, we know this happens. So it's very strange why a lot of people even disagree with this fact. If you put a bone in an acid-based solution, it will break down the bone. Again, we know this. Like, you could just use vinegar and it works. So anyway, I just want you to know that absolutely sugar does weaken bones, lead to osteoporosis. All right, number 9 is enormous, because this is what we're all talking about, is that increasing your sugar intake increases your free radical damage. So one of the fastest ways to really get a dis-ease in the body is to increase inflammation. And by taking in sugar, it creates free radicals, and those free radicals then increase inflammation, which then starts to cause joint-based pain or muscle-based inflammation, aches, pains, fatigue. All of these things can be caused by increasing our sugar intake and then essentially creating the disease-based state. So when we have unpaired electrons, which is essentially what we talked about when we have these free radicals, and they're bouncing around, causing havoc within your body, well, they need antioxidants, and you're not going to get those antioxidants to prevent oxidative damage, which happens from free radicals, unless you're taking in good whole food, such as those brightly colored fruits and vegetables. Remember, no brown and white foods. Those are not going to have the antioxidants typically that your body needs. So the last one I want to get to right now, number 10, is that sugar causes cancer over time. There are many studies linking this. I've talked about them many times in the past. One of the best ones to just go back to is StephenCabral.com/585, 10 ways sugar causes cancer. Please do check out that show. Share it with loved ones as well. I mean, a lot of people just really aren't up on what you and I are talking about today, and they don't understand it. They don't really get it. And there is a reason why I do my best to try to speak in a way I believe in the Cabral concept that can reach out to more and more people. And as health, because I know that there's a lot of health practitioners listening to the Cabral concept as well, you have to be able to relate this information to people in a way that's actually usable. So hopefully today, you're understanding that not everyone's worried about their skin. Maybe you're 18 years old and you're just not worried about your skin. And you might not be worried about your bones, but maybe you are worried about becoming overweight, or maybe you are worried about cholesterol. Well, sugar affects all of these things. So what I try to do is understand that people are affected by sugar in different ways. So for example, the ectomorph, well, they might not become overweight for sure, but they're certainly going to lead to more free radical damage and wrinkly skin on an ectomorph. And although they aren't going to deal with the same insulin resistance, it could certainly raise their cholesterol, even though they're thin. So we have to relate it to people in their own way, and that's the best way that I think that I can do that. But cancer is something that affects us all, regardless of body type, regardless of who you are, and even what age you are. I mean, children are getting cancer more and more often from the toxins of the environment, and sugar is one of them. I mean, that's essentially an exotoxin that we're putting in our body that then causes more endotoxins that our body creates. It's so very, very important. And also, dementia and cancer go hand in hand. It's difficult to find something that causes cancer that doesn't also cause dementia. So I would just like to keep that in mind. When I talk about cancer, I think of almost dementia, Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's as like a cancer of the brain. I mean, your brain is literally deteriorating. And I mean, cancer is certainly killing your body as well by stealing its nutrients, by stealing its energy. And sugar is what cancer feeds off of. I mean, it truly does. So when people are saying, well, I want to go on a low sugar diet because I have cancerous tumors, totally get that, totally understand that. It's kind of a backwards process because you also want to be able to get in tons of antioxidants, all your greens, all of those things. But at the same time, I get it because sugar is the fuel source for cancerous tumors. So super important to check out and just understand the relationship between that. If you want a full show on that, just go to StephenCabral.com/585. I'd love to be able to give you more information on that as well. So that's our top 10. And the reason I mentioned all of these is, again, everyone has their own thing to watch out for, especially if you have a family predisposition to one of those things. But do keep in mind, I'm talking about processed foods. I'm talking about things that come in a package, they come in a box, or they come in a bag. So if we're talking about like processed crackers and chips, if we're talking about candy, if we're talking about fruit juices that have already been, kept on a store shelf that you're not fresh pressing, if we're talking about all the baked goods and the pastries and the muffins, that's what I'm talking about in terms of sugar. That's processed wheats and glutens and all these things that break down very, very quickly in the body and they contain a lot of fructose. That is what's going to lead to the free radical damage, the inflammation, the cholesterol, the wrinkling of the skin, the brown spots in the skin, all of those different things, right? And they're all super addictive. And once your body gets used to the taste of all these things, normal food doesn't taste as good, right? It's like, oh, well, why would I want that celery when I can have this? So you have to understand that it's the addictive nature. And after a couple weeks, you really can retrain your taste buds. It takes a little bit of time, but it's certainly worth it. And then also keep in mind that all of the berries and all of the green apples and the kiwis and the grapefruit, all the low glycemic fruits are excellent to have. You should not be afraid of those. The fructose in those is quite low, and you're also getting all of the fiber along with them. So please do not be afraid of those. What we do need to be afraid of are all the processed foods, the things that you can't see growing in nature. If you can see it growing in nature, you're most likely okay. You're okay with the sweet potatoes. You're okay with the Japanese yams and the yucca, all of those things. I do agree that for 21 days, you'll probably want to go an elimination diet, that you want to go lower fruit, lower carbs, so that you can readjust and rebalance your blood sugar levels, rebalance your insulin receptors, all of those things. I completely agree with that, and I recommend it in my own practice, and that's why I recommend the 21-day Dr. Ball detox. Or, you can do whatever you feel is appropriate for you, but at some point, you're going to need to re-regulate those blood sugar levels. It's going to help you to lose the weight if you need to do that. It's going to help you to get well, rebalance energy levels. It's honestly the best thing that you can do for yourself as a starting point, as a jump-off point, is even if you just wanted to go on a whole food diet, I'm great with that as well. Meaning that if you eat a food and you can't see it growing in nature, well, it's the wrong food for you. It's one of the easiest ways to get started if you want. I like to provide people with a little bit more details than that. But really, what I want to do, for 2018 is just provide you with the know-how, the education, and the wherewithal to be able to follow through on these specific types of plans. So please do let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if I can ever help in any way, or maybe a more efficient way. I would love to be able to do that. Feel free to head on over to cabralsupportgroup.com. It's a free private Facebook group. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you'd like to see additional podcast topics. Be happy to do that. Thank you so much for tuning into the Cabral Concept. Really do appreciate each and every one of your listens. Take care. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stephencabral.com/courses.